Howarth, and once again it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in this debate. And may I thank the Honourable Member for Henley for securing the debate. It's really important that we debate and discuss the situation in the Council of Europe in relation to Russia in this House. As the leader of the Labour delegation to the Council of Europe and someone who has seen at first hand the turbulence that Russia is causing at the Council of Europe, I believe this debate is indeed critical. Russia's relationship with the Council of Europe is fraught with difficulty. How we approach it over the coming months and years will have a profound effect, not only on the Council, but on the integrity of UK foreign policy and the security of the UK and other member states. I would like to begin by reminding members of Russia's accession to the Council, as the points made in that debate at the time are being replayed to some extent today. Russian membership was given in 1996. It was a decision based on pragmatism and democratic hope. Its human rights record was a long way from spotless. Indeed, its initial membership bid was suspended because of its actions in Chechnya. But on balance, it was agreed that Russia and the Council would mutually benefit from Russia's membership. Over time, it was hoped, Russia's record on human rights and the rule of law would improve. The Council and Russian citizens, the Moscow Times said, would get some small degree of leverage over Moscow and its justice system. And to an extent, Russia's record did improve. It ratified the European Convention on Human Rights, it acceded to various Council conventions and made reforms to its judicial and penal system. But the list of human rights abuses and the occasions on which it has flown in the face of Council of Europe conventions is so long, it would be impossible to fully recount them within the constraints of this debate. Its record in Chechnya is horrific, as is its aggression in Transnistria. At home, its treatment of minority religious groups, LGBT people in Chechnya particularly, as was mentioned by the Honourable Member, so eloquently, and the restrictions it imposes on journalists clearly derides the principles the Council of Europe was founded on. Human Rights Watch says that under Putin, human rights standards have fallen. And Amnesty International's report on human rights in Russia over the past year records further restrictions to the rights to freedom of expression, association and peaceful assembly, harassment and intimidation of human rights defenders and independent NGOs. Religious minorities continued to face harassment and persecution. The right to a fair trial was frequently violated. Torture and other ill treatment persisted. That's the analysis of Amnesty International. In 2017, Russia had 370 registered cases at the European Court of Human Rights, almost triple the number from Turkey. We have allowed it to get away with quite a lot, if I'm honest, too much up to now. But we must draw a line somewhere. And if the invasion of another member state's sovereign territory does not represent that line, what on earth does? It is absolutely right that the Council of Europe should have condemned and sanctioned the Russian Federation for its actions in Crimea and in the Donbass. And of course, my honourable friend, if you like, in this context, was absolutely right in saying that Russia excluded itself from the Assembly. And can I say this? It may suspend its contributions to the Council. It may threaten not to resume them. It may risk its position in the Committee of Ministers. But we cannot allow ourselves to be blackmailed, to accept such brazen disregard for the common principles on which the Council was founded. The job of the Council of Europe is to promote human rights, democracy and the rule of law. In that context, we have to ask ourselves, why is Russia so keen to reinstate its membership on its own terms? Does its membership enable the Council's mission? Does it help us protect human rights, democracy and the rule of law? Or does its role complement its approach elsewhere on the international stage? In other words, is the Russian Federation's membership primarily related to an attempt simply to disrupt and to divide Western democracy? I acknowledge Secretary-General Jagland's position on all of this. He argues that it would be a big step back for Europe if Russia withdraws participation in the Council. But in my view, Jagland's position is also deeply worrying. In the Financial Times in November, a report made it clear that Jagland was touring European capitals, warning of a serious risk that Moscow could withdraw or crash out of the 47-member state body unless its demands are met. It would be really very, very bad if Russia was to leave, and I quote, because the convention and court has been as important to Russian citizens. It will be a negative development for Europe because we will have a Europe without Russia. It would be a big step back for Europe. I don't accept that. 2 days ago, he tweeted, "President Trump is right. The world wants a better relationship between USA and Russia. The first step has been taken, hopefully." And then again, a few hours later, "Good that Presidents Trump and Putin meet. Better than the opposite. Congratulations to the Finnish government. An outstanding statesman," in relation to the President of Finland. Of course.
The Honourable made a very, very powerful point about Monsieur Jagland, and I think she needs to go a little bit further, I may suggest this, that he wants a legacy of what has really been a failure of his tenure. This is his legacy. He wants the Russians back. The Honourable Lady is right. We are being blackmailed in a very simple way by the Secretary-General to actually allow him to have some kudos, and her point is absolutely forthright and is right.
With the honourable member, and indeed, you know, it's quite clear that he is more than sympathetic as well to the Russian cause. I mean, those tweets in relation to the meeting between Trump and Putin earlier this week, in my view, showed a lack of real judgment. For someone who is leading an important international European body that defends human rights, I found those tweets quite astonishingly disturbing. But I do not think either that the argument that Russian citizens need to maintain access to the European Council for Human Rights is correct. My understanding is that if Russia is suspended from the Committee of Ministers, it is exactly that, just suspended. It's not expelled from the Council of Europe, its membership is suspended. And that on that basis, Russian citizens would still have access to the European Court. And I think this is something that really needs to be bottomed, because the view being propagated around the Council of Europe and amongst the delegates of the Assembly is exactly that we cannot afford to lose human rights access to the European Court for Russian citizens. And in any case, my response to that is, what about the human rights of the Ukrainians and the Crimeans and the Crimean Tatars? They have been deeply compromised by the actions of the Russian Federation. But Jagland does not seem to want to acknowledge that. Now, I genuinely look forward to a time when we can welcome Russia back to the Council of Europe on the right terms. But so far, Russia has done nothing to reverse its annexation of Crimea. It continues, to be honest, in the words of Secretary Jagland, in a totally unacceptable manner, to block the Council's Human Rights Commissioner from visiting the region. It continues to undermine the most fundamental pillars of the European Convention. And in recent years, it has ramped up its aggression on the global stage. This is a country which defends President Assad and his use of chemical weapons. This is a country which has meddled in the US election and is now under investigation for its ties to the Brexit campaign. This is a country which was responsible, let's not forget, for poisoning a former intelligence officer, Skripal, and his daughter, Yulia, right here in the UK. And while we fight amongst ourselves in the West, Russia is busy, of course, building out its strategic capacity and its influence in the Black Sea and the Eastern Mediterranean. Careful balancing act was played out when Russia was given membership. At that time, there was genuine hope. There was a belief that Russian membership would help Russia and Europe integrate and move towards a shared moral code. But to lift sanctions now on that assumption would be wrong. In the words of one Ukrainian official, it would be the first hole in the wall. This is a matter of principle over expediency, as my honourable friend said, we cannot permit a member state to behave aggressively and to hold the Council to ransom over its membership. What kind of message does that give to Russia, to Ukraine and to the people of Crimea? What does that say about the standards that we apply to other countries or to future applicants? This is blackmail and it cannot be tolerated. But I want to make it clear in concluding that my feelings do not come from a place of dislike for the Russian people or the Russian state. They come from an honest and sincere belief in the work of the Council of Europe. The principles on which it was founded we must all, as citizens of a liberal democracy, hold dear. We need only to reflect the grounds on which the Council was founded to remind us that we must never, ever take these values for granted. And at a time of increasing instability at home, in Europe and beyond, we must robustly defend that which keeps us safe and at liberty. Thank you, Mr. Howard.